Alrighty, hello to everybody. We are live and direct on Davos TV with Davos Worldwide. Very excited to have an amazing panel. My name is Professor James Cooper. I teach at California Western School of Law in San Diego, where I am at this moment. But we have folks from all around the world. Actually, in Davos, James Ong is here with us. Very excited. I'll introduce you in a second. Andrew Mura from Toronto, Canada. But are you in Florida at this point, or you're in
No,
Toronto?
I'm in Toronto.
Okay. Kasha Kompella, live and direct from Bangalore, India. Welcome, Kash. And Dr. Ayal Brook, who is here live from Tel Aviv, Israel. And not to be outdone, the farthest away, potentially, depending on where you're measuring from, but certainly the first to show up this morning, Adolfo Silva Walbaum, who's a professor at the Pontifical Catholic University of Valparaiso in the Southern Cone in Chile. Welcome, everybody. And so we'll start in a second. I'm going to make a couple of introductions and then we'll get right into our panel. Super excited again that we're here. Thank you, Anand Singh, our main curator, who's really just powering this entire affair. This is day one of Davos Worldwide. Annika Pampel, thank you. The tech guys, Jay and Cal, and the whole Davos Worldwide team. Thank you also to Gary Shaneberg for your leadership with Davos TV. So James was just asking before we went on air where this is being showed. There's a series of broadcast vehicles all across the promenade at Davos, as this is day one of the World Economic Forum, and we're on the sidelines. And this star-studded panel is about our AI. That is not Amnesty International, although I'm sure we'll talk about human rights eventually, but AI in terms of artificial intelligence. I know some of you heard me use that joke before. I'm sorry. Let me tell you a little bit about our star-studded panel. Dr. Ayal Brook is a partner and head of artificial intelligence practice at S. Horowitz and Company, one of Israel's foremost and largest law firms. He has a special interest in copyright law, media, entertainment, and artificial intelligence. He's been recognized across the world for his contributions to AI in the law and serves as senior research fellow at the Shamgar Center for Digital Law and Innovation at Tel Aviv University, and he's an adjunct professor at Reichman University and Ono Academic College in Israel. His PhD, which he did at the University of Warwick, and he has his MPhil from the University of Cambridge, is about music authorship in the digital and algorithmic age. So clearly, both as a former musician, where he's released 2 albums and played in Israel's biggest band from 30 years ago, he's played gigs all around the UK and supported the Cranberries at Wembley and played at Ronnie Scott's Songwriters Festival. And he's just recently, this is just wonderful news, he's recently been selected to serve as a member of the Government Advisory Expert Forum on Artificial Intelligence on behalf of the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, which is a forum in Israel, one of the leaders in AI, as we all know. Welcome, Ayal. Professor Adolfo Silva Walbaum is a prominent Chilean attorney with an outstanding academic professional career. He got his law degree at PUCV, which is Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaiso, in the Southern Cone, completed his master's at the same university. He went on to do a doctorate at the University of Granada in Spain. He teaches economic law, commercial law, and he serves as the director of a super interesting project. I've been down there. It is an amazing group of people, and they're doing really important things in Valparaiso. It's called the Legal Management Innovation Lab, or LMIL. It's a joint initiative between PUCV and Thomson Reuters, which is aimed at promoting innovation and digital transformation in the legal field. And he's recognized for his contributions to the study and development of economic and commercial law in Chile, and for his commitment to using AI in his practice. Not to be outdone, Dr. James Ong is a legend in this world. Long before the rest of us got into AI, he was doing his PhD in it at the University of Texas in Austin. He's Singapore-based. He founded the Artificial Intelligence International Institute, or AIII. It's a think tank. advocating sustainable AI for humanity, and is the co-author of AI for Humanity, Building a Sustainable AI for the Future, which is published by Wiley. I've been reading it, just amazing. You and your co-author have done a wonderful job. He's got almost 40 years of experience. He's been an adjunct professor in a number of schools, including the Singapore University TD and the AI Mega Center. He's a member of the Strategic Resource Allocation Committee at the National Supercomputing Center in Singapore, and we're just very, very blessed to have him here. Andrew Muroff, an old bandmate of mine, is the Chief Executive Officer of Strainprint Technologies, which is the world's leading source for real-world medical cannabis patient research, where he fuses deep corporate financial experience running technology companies with broad experience across regulated cannabis industries in Canada, the US, plus he has a passion to help people. He's a hands-on entrepreneur. He's been involved in exited a number of businesses successfully since 1995, been at the forefront of technology. He was the guy who first took 12 o'clock from flashing on my VCR at home back in the late 70s, early 80s, so thank you for that. My co-author, Kashyap, is now tasked with that a terrible strain, speaking of Strainprint. Andrew's led mergers and acquisition for publicly traded companies that are in the web development area, including Cyberplex, helping to grow it from 40 million, from 10 million to 40 million, just under 2 years. He was at the helm of SoftQuad, which was the co-author of XML language, and he sold that off to Corel for $75 million. And in 2004, he founded 80/20 Solutions, one of the first B2C marketing platforms, where he exited in 2012. He's a member of the State Bar of Michigan and has an MBA from the University of Windsor in Canada. He's the author of law review articles, a frequent business speaker, and an amazing guitar. Both a maker, a luthier, and a musician. Kashyap Kompella, finally, is in fairness in advertising, Kashyap is co-author of a book. I'm sorry to do this, but I will turn that off in a second. Kashyap and I just have a new book out. Oh, there it is. Thank you. New book out called Artificial Intelligence for Lawyers, Shameless Self-Promotion. Thank you so much, Kashyap. And he is, as I mentioned, from Bangalore. He's an award-winning analyst and best-selling author and advisor. He serves as a visiting professor for AI at BITS, Palani School of Management, known as BITSOM in India. He's on the Institute of Directors. He teaches also at the Center for American Studies in Poland. He serves as CEO of RPA2AI Research, excuse me, in an AI industry. An analyst firm with presence in the US and in Canada. He advises on enterprises, public sector agencies, and institutional financial investors on AI technology investments, risks, and ethics and governance. A few years ago, he was ranked #1 thought leader globally on Thinkers 360 regarding AI, and he teaches he's just an amazing writer and thinker about AI, thought leader. His work appears in the BBC, and the Guardian, the Economist, Mint, Economic Times, the Hindustan Times. It's cited in all sorts of EU. We're going to run out of time. Sorry, there's no time left for the panel. I've done all the biographies. So welcome, Kashyap. Hopefully Eduardo will be joining us a little bit later. He's got Rafiota who teaches artificial intelligence at the University of Milan in Bicocca, and we will hopefully have him as well. So let me start this panel by asking this question. How are each of you using AI in your place of work currently? Is it a major part of what you do, or is it just a nice to have but not a need to have? James, you want to go first?
Sure. If you use Google Map, you're already using AI every time you drive, right? Basically, if you think about it, right? Now, but seriously, I use it for a lot of novel ideas, creative ideas, what it can suggest to me, including I like hallucination from the large language model, because you can give me things I never thought about. And also, of course, I use it for efficiency. But my biggest use of AI is actually using it as a research target. I'm always interacting with AI and understand what it's capable of doing, not able to do, and whether is it telling me the truth or it's not accurate or not accurate. It's part of my study of the current state of AI in terms of how the tool is performing right now.
So you like the hallucinations? You're okay with that?
I use it in a certain context. I use it if I want to have something that I cannot imagine, right? So I use it as a discovery tool, discovering of new ideas. I also like to compare, let's say, answer between Gemini, Cloud, and ChatGPT. I just see how different are they. They have different personality, as you know, because they are curated and nurtured by people in different way. So this is how I look at AI. Is more like it's almost like a companion to do something with me, but to improve efficiency, new ideas, as well as for me to understand who they are, almost like a psychologist talking to AI in a sense.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Andrew, James mentioned hallucinations. How are you using it in your work?
I'm not using it for hallucinations, but I'm sure James is talking about the tool called hallucination. um, so my world, we're a direct research company, and so we've gathered quite a large data set on medical patient use of medical cannabis across the world. Some of it's standardized, some of it's non-standardized data, and so the purpose of our research is really to uncover behavioral behavior against chemical profile, and because the data set is so large, we're talking about almost 1 billion data points on cannabis use. And so we now are using AI to build tools that will help provide recommendation for physicians, and also allow researchers to uncover. There's over 40,000 articles on cannabis research on PubMed, so identifying what's what is a key criteria for most of these researchers, and for physicians and for product formulators. So my work is about discovering the science of cannabinoid medicine, and we are just starting to release the tools now to the public. We've been in development for quite some time, and we've been gathering data for almost 10 years, but only in the last couple of years of the tools now become available for us to build our recommendation engines on top.
Great, thank you for that. Kashyap, how are you using AI tools?
Yeah, so using AI tools a lot to improve personal productivity. For example, I mean, who wants to attend a lot of online meetings? So there is this tool called Fireflies, which attends meetings and sort of takes notes and summarizes it. So that sometimes you have to read between the lines, but I think it's you can't be in all places all the time. So that's one thing. And when I teach, one situation I face is like other students using AI tools to complete their assignments. Sometimes they're allowed to do, sometimes they're not allowed to do. But if I want to check, I use plagiarism detection tools like GPT-0 or Zero GPT, etc. So those are quite handy as well. Then speech to text has become quite reliable in the last few years. So I use a tool on my laptop called Mac Whisper, which sort of takes the audio and converts it, spits it out into text in a reasonably fast amount of time. It's installed on my computer, so there is no question of data going out into the cloud, etc. Then from the clients that we advise, most of them we help them with building their own chat GPT for business, so to speak, or really RAG applications or enterprise RAG, retrieval augmented applications, how they can take the data, their own business data, and use this chat format to answer customer and employee queries.
Thank you for that. Tell us, please, Ayal, how are you using it in your work?
Basically, personally, I use it. It became part of my routine. In teaching, researching, brainstorming, creating, music-wise, everything. I use it like every day. In terms of work, basically, it's quite a substantial. It's one of the leading law firms, and things are done easily. But we are currently checking, and there's a pilot to actually use AI with a leading company to actually use it for the lawyers in order to summarize, in order to find the cases, and it's getting there. I think definitely it's something that is going to be used by leading and large law firms in the next very soon. Very soon.
Thank you for that. Adolfo, how about you? How are you using it?
Well, First of all, thank you, James, for the invitation. I'm very glad, and it's a huge honor to be with this enormous colleague, expert. In my case, I can say that the use of AI, I can say I use it in the personal way, in the professional. To be very honest, in my personal life, I using more and more the AI, asking of little things. For example, now I have a travel, and my brother-in-law, he said, you can use it. And I said, no, really, you can give some specific instruction, and it's very useful for things like that. In our in labor in the university in the lab, we are using for the model of the data. We're now working for some companies, especially in compliance, some projects, using the data to predict some effects. We're working with a company who works with crime, and we have a project we're going to take the last 10 years of the data of the crime, and the idea is try to use the AI to predict what is going to happen in the future. Also, we are using the AI in the lab. When we receive the ideas of the colleague and the students to try to say them to left away the fear and try to embrace the technology. So that's what I can say in two ways, in personal and the professional. And also in my class, I try to use it, but well, in that case, there's some ethic problem, and it's not a very easy matter, because there's so many things that we have to talk about it. But I use it with carefully, but I'm trying to use it in my class too.
Well, thank you for that, everyone. We've got two data scientists with us, and Kashyap and James Ong. And before we go to you first, let's ask the lawyers a quick question, because often the data scientists, like every other client we have as lawyers, does stuff and then comes to us after the fact and says, "Can I do this?" For IL, your clients are some of the major AI players in the world. How is copyright getting affected? Like, what are the effects that AI poses to copyright and other intellectual properties for those of us who don't study the area?
Well, it's a very dramatic and substantial effect. Basically, it does undermine the very basic essence of copyright law, which is based on human authorship. And there are various angles that it does affect. The one is basically the issue of training AI on copyrighted materials, which obviously does require, machine learning does require enormous amount of data. And that's something that requires, if DALI 2 was 650 million, then it was billions, and now we're in trillions. So it's unprecedented amounts of data. And obviously, many of them are not in the public domain. So there's a question, there's a big issue if you can actually train that, if that requires copyright approval. And in that sense, Israel is quite a pioneer. And actually, in November 22, the Ministry of Justice has issued an opinion that basically said that you can actually train machine learning on data, and that would consider fair use. First and foremost, it would be a fair use doctrine. Secondly, it would be incidental use, and then possibly transient use. So basically, it is allowed in Israel currently. It is only an opinion. It has not been tested by the court, and that still remains to be seen. And there are a few issues that are excluded from this opinion. First of all, it doesn't relate to the output, so that's another question. And also, it doesn't refer to cases where there is a specific material of an author in order to compete with this author. So, for example, if the whole data is basically like one artist based on his works, in order to compete with this artist, that is not covered by this opinion. But that's quite a pioneer opinion, again, 2 years ago, and it's quite interesting. Another issue, a very big issue, is the issue of the output and whether is there necessarily a need for a human author, basically, in order to recognize and to grant copyright. So we have a few cases, both in the US and in other territories, like the question of Thaler, the case of Stephen Thaler, Creativity Machine, and Zarya of the Dawn, which the Copyright Office declined and did not grant using Midjourney to create a comic book, where the Copyright Office basically did not grant copyright. So that's the case of Thaler actually gone to court, and Judge Howell rejected an appeal because his request was rejected by the US Copyright Office. Other people believe that, like Ryan Abbott, for example, he proposed the principle of legal neutrality. So there's no reason to deny legal protection merely because the creator is not human. And now there's a question, who is going to be the owner of such works? And there could be at least 6 options. It could be the user, it could be the programmer, it could be the machine, could be perhaps a joint authorship, there could be a work made for hire, or perhaps it should be in the public domain and no copyright at all should be granted. So it's a very complicated issue, basically, which is undermining the very essence of copyright law, which is like a 300 years old law. And I think that's a very, very substantial issue which the law would have to face with and decide, you know, what basically develop new terms, I would say, including the definition of the author, what legal regime shall be applied, and other issues that are quite substantial in light of such very fast-paced changes that are happening. And I'm saying that, you know, with on the one hand, with excitement and I'm fascinated by this really fascinated by this change and dramatic change. But on the other hand, saying with some sort of you know, sadness, because I really like copyright law and I'm coming from that, like 30 years I'm dealing with that. And to be honest, I'm not sure that it will continue to survive in the near future as it is. So it's a very big change.
It's a great
So
point, and
mixed emotions.
Because Israel is now at the far end with Japan on scrape away, right? At least to some, you know, not yet tested in the courts. Where's Chile with this, Adolfo? How do you look at fair use and scraping and copyright in the context of an AI tool?
I think, well, like Eyal says, it's very complex, this matter. I think last week, 2 weeks ago, we knew about a work of the last work for the student. He gave the final test, and it was an excellent work. It was made only using AI. The problem was that we knew about after he present the paper. So I think in this case it's very complex for the legal, not only to the former, for the legal students, for the legal industry, because technically, I think I'm not expert, but the AI took words from a lot of research. So technically, when they threw the answer that you ask after the prompt use, it's technically it's not a copy because take research from so many parts. So the problem is for the lawyers, at least that what I can see, that we have two levels, and I think it's a problem of the maturity and our responsibility. Because if a student in the, I don't know, the first and the second grade, they don't have the level of the knowledge of the law to use this kind of tool. So the problem is very complex because, well, all we know that it's falling very fast. So to be some kind of blind with this huge change, we can't. So I don't know, maybe try to put some protocols to use, but always the people have to say which is the reason. But for me, the problem is that this is change everything. The way that the lawyers and they was made to make the exercise of the law and the former and now for like, the teacher, it's a huge challenge. So now we have a law, we have the institute, we have the copyright law, but for me this is a new stage. This is something new. So now, at least in the moment in Chile and in the other parts in Latin America, it's how we are going to create the new rules for this new stage. I think that's the problem, because you use the typical rules for the pre-stage after this AI area. I think that's the problem, and
Yeah,
that's.
We're now at, forgive me for interrupting, Davos, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're dealing with, in terms of 300-year-old law or 19th century law, in terms of some of the Berne Convention, the Brussels, just even issues of droit moral, moral rights. These are very wonderful legal doctrines that have tested us and lasted, but now we're in a brand new era, and it's like law 4.0. It's, the fourth industrial revolution. Are we going to see the return of legacy media companies? If the New York Times wins against OpenAI in all the other cases that have been joined with it, then it's a really interesting time of almost like, hey, big media companies, you couldn't control the internet, but now you get a second kick of the can. Andrew, you watch this both as a musician, but also as you've written on AI, on copyright. What's your sense of where it's going to go, especially in Canada?
So two parts to that. One, in Canada, they're still kind of catching up on legislation and rules around this. So they have some voluntary recommendations on how things should be developed and things should be innovated and funded. That's the first part, and so there isn't a lot of there aren't a lot of guardrails around this. But in terms of copyright, even going back 25 years ago, we think about what happened to it more 30 years ago when the internet became commercialized, and all of the regulatory environment had to adapt to digital commercial transactions and things like that. At that time, copyright was also faced with big changes, but this is even beyond it. Copyright law at that time, they were already talking about it needing a substantial update to many of the rules around timelines, timeframes around time protection, that kind of stuff. But it's I think we're Eyal raised a great point about does it need to be a human who actually creates it? And I think we're going to move in the direction. I personally think we're going to move in the direction where it doesn't have to be a human that actually does the creation, because more and more of the creation that we're going to see that is going to need protection is going to be non-human created. So I think that's going to be one of the big things that we'll see in the next couple of years with respect to copyright.
Yeah, it's we'll come to regulation in a second, because Adolfo kind of raised that as well, and all of us are saying it's going to be decided in the courts. Maybe the courts aren't the best place to be dealing with this.
I would argue courts are not the best place to deal with this, right? They actually have no clue, and to be honest, the legislators don't have a clue either.
So maybe this group here should make the rules. Kashyap and then James, from your perspective as programmers, as advisors to companies that are actually doing this work in the technical trenches, what are you seeing these folks thinking about? Are they concerned about copyright, or are they just doing it, straight in, and then we'll worry about that later? Kashyap, do
Yeah,
you
I
want to?
think it's very, very quickly. I think it's a more so ready, fire, aim approach.
Ready,
So
fire,
there is
aim.
a
Yeah.
aim, yeah. So there is an open AI whistleblower called Sushir Balaji, who's recently committed suicide. But before that, he's written his thoughts on how exactly the companies, at least OpenAI, is thinking about copyrights. So it's quite instructive to read that letter. But broadly, from a technology point of view, in copyright law, there is this for derivative works, there is the notion of has there been enough transformation that has happened from the original work or the original piece of content for it to constitute fair use. So technically, it's not very sure, at least, or we're not very clear whether some kind of a transformation of the original content is happening, or is it some kind of a storage and clever storage and retrieval in the whole transform model. So that's still, we're kicking the tires on that. The second thing, as a result of this, because there are so many high-profile lawsuits at this point in time, there is also content licensing deals that are being struck. So there is all the past data, but going forward as well as, and there are clearly identifiable or at least large organizations who can muscle in and strike these deals. So that's just an interesting thing. And it also remains an open question. The economics of this technology from a purely say business point of view are not very viable for end user organizations. So on top of it, you layer the content costs as well. So will that be viable going forward or not? That also is not very clear. And ultimately, if you look at definitely, I mean, as an author, as a columnist, I feel the pain of my content being used to train different models without my permission. But at least in some spheres, say in academic publishing or already the content, the authors really don't have a say in which their content is purposed or repurposed, etc. So the current system that we have is not without its flaws. So it remains to be seen what is that new social contract that we come up with to define copyright, the new copyright architecture going forward.
Those are amazing points, because you've got companies like Axel Springer making deals, and Apple and others are making licensing deals with legacy media companies to license their work. That may be the fork in the road that we take. And I think it's a really excellent point. Just thinking about our own contract, once you sign it, and if you haven't reserved those rights, you're at the vagaries of your publisher as to where they choose to sell your work or not choose their work. James, we'll go to you first, and then to Andrew to finish the point. Please go ahead, James.
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer or legal trained on this thing, but I would like to say, while we are looking at this from the legal or policy perspective, right, or the commercial, we need to recognize there's a paradigm shift in computing that's happening here, because we cannot be tackling the same problem legally while we don't understand the underlying paradigm shift. If you listen to the Jensen Huang speech at the CES, he has a chart that talk about there's a computational model change from the traditional human creating algorithm will compute and then following procedurally generating the data or whatever, and etc., right, or taking in the data. Right now with machine learning, it's the human that actually is taking data to generate the algorithm, which is used to generate data as well. So that paradigm has changed, and that's why there's a lot of commercial value for the data itself. So as a legal person, for a legal profession, you may want to relook at the technology shift and then decide. It's almost like when you have quantum computing, all the cryptography doesn't work anymore, right? Because you used to assume there's so much time to go and compute. So I think the legal profession can relook at this thing and say that from the fundamental first principle of the computing paradigm shift, we have to redo it. And also, then you have to recreate additional computing infrastructure like ownership of the data, right, to the Web3 or the decentralization. So we have to have a rethinking of the whole thing rather than trying to patch the current legal system to solve a problem that is not solvable. So that's my perspective, yes.
Thank you. Andrew, did you want to finish the point?
That's exactly what I'm saying. We have to rethink it from the beginning. We can't just take the existing paradigm and try to fix it. It needs a wholesale refresh.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. And for those who are just joining us, we're at Davos Worldwide on Davos TV on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. I'm Professor James Cooper from California Western School of Law in San Diego, and this is a wonderful panel on AI and law. And we've got a star-studded group of experts from all around the world, and we're very excited that you're here with us. And if you're on the promenade, I'm sorry about the prices. Okay, James, I guess you're the only one there. Let's ask about, because we're all pushing, this is all leading towards the final big issue of regulation. That's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Ayal, let's start with you. What's happening in Israel? They're often a first mover. You've got a national set of guidelines, ethical national industrial policy. Where are we in Israel on the final regulation? Oh, could you turn on your... If you could turn on your mic, please.
Sorry. Regulation is a must, basically. The question is what sort of regulation. Now, Israel specifically, it's been termed a startup nation. There's a very entrepreneurial spirit, and we would like to enhance that. So the regulation here, basically, is a sector-specific regulation, sectorial regulation. They want to do it slowly, gradually, and also with the international interoperability of frameworks, fostering consistency with the existing approaches in leading countries and international organizations. And also there's a risk-based approach. So it's starting gradually, and recently there's been a regulation in the financial sector, and there's a special interministerial team combined from the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Finance, Competition Authority, the Securities Authority, Capital Market, and the Bank of Israel, basically, all creating a 200 pages, very serious, very deep report, which basically encourage the using of AI in the financial sector, understanding and stressing basically the advantages like reducing operating costs, enhancing product service quality, expanding financial accessibility, and assisting financial entities with compliance and regulatory enforcement. But at the same time, does strengthen, mentioning the risk associated with it, like transparency, privacy, reliability, and cybersecurity risk, fraud, etc. So basically, it suggests a risk-based regulatory approach. So, for example, if it would be a chatbot, it would be subject to less stringent and requirements. And if we're talking about, for example, underwriting system, that would be subject to a more severe system. So that's the balance, but it's only an interim report. We have to wait for the final report, but that's starting, and that's like one of the first regulators that basically set the standard for this specific sector.
Thank you. In Chile, Adolfo, Chile's always been a reform maniac. You were once you get into the reform, sometimes like in criminal procedure law, your country in Latin America was the last to start, but the first to finish. You've reformed your pension systems, your education systems. You are constantly in a state of reform. What's happening, Adolfo, in Chile with respect to AI? And are the legislators, the people doing and writing these legislation, these acts, are they prepared?
Well, in many ways, it's very similar, like Al said. We have to be a difference. We have a national national guidelines of using of AI for one hand. For the other, we have some specifically law and rules for the industry, and the financial industry have their own rules, especially in the fintech industry. We have a special law, and then maybe it could be a difference for the other countries in Latin America. Chile, it's 2, 3 ahead of the other countries. the other thing is very interesting that we have the first the law about the cybersecurity, the first law in the region. But in the data protection, we have recently law after a long conversation in the parliament, in the Congress, but we have the new law about the data protection. And you know, it's very funny that there have some effect between the new rules and the exercise in the compliance area. So it's some like you are you get the new rule and then you get the new area to exercise the law. So the compliance area, it's increased with time. Now we are seeing some very important effect in the statement in the law, because they're very concerned in Latin America and Chile. It's not the exception about the corruption, the threat of corruption. So the compliance issues and the compliance concern about the government, it's increased too. So I could say that, so we have some special law in the, if you're compared to the region, no, in the cybersecurity, and then in Chile we have a very good infrastructure for that, and maybe to be the leader in the region. We have a special in the financial, especially in the fintech. And the other, it's like Eyal said, for the regularity of some sectors. But in the public law, especially in the corruption threat, I think it's something is going to increase in time.
Thank you for that. Andrew, before we go to you, let's ask the data scientists in the room what kind of regulation they prefer. Are you a big fan of the EU type of risk and different hierarchies of risk, or do you prefer a sectoral approach, or do you like the American Wild West, no rules generally except those that are already on the books? James, you want to start?
Sure. I think if we talk about regulation, we need to ask a higher level question. We are regulating against what kind of risk? If you're talking about a sovereignty scope, right, within the country, then yeah, I think the government, especially government that is well trusted by the people, like in Singapore, they will impose whatever that is pragmatic while balancing the innovation. But if you are talking about regulating against other risks like weapons use, which is across nation, that one needs a lot of coordination and so-called proliferation to make it happen. And that is another type of regulation that we need, which require consensus at the UN level or the World Economic Forum level, right? Then there's higher level, even higher level of risk, what they call the super intelligent, when AI exceeds human capability. That one requires even more human wisdom to address that. So I would say there are different types of regulation. I think the regulation against commercial use, all those things, we humans have way of solving that problem, because that problem to me is not the biggest. But we do need to have policy to smoothen out the process of transformation as we go through the AI jobs, the job market, and the economic structure shift, basically. Yeah, and Singapore is very pragmatic. Singapore is extremely pragmatic with standards, policy, with tools, and solving problem rather than try to define something that is overly draconian or too specific, which sometimes does not really work very well, because the human mind is just limited in terms of how much you can think through all the problem, right? Yeah.
That's actually going to be the last question. Thank you for foreshadowing that, because and I know, Eyal, you think a lot about synthetic thinking versus and how human creativity is going to be impacted as an artist and a lawyer. But we'll come to that in a sec. Kashyap, what's your sense of regulation? What do you prefer? And in a second, then we're going to go to Professor Eduardo Raffiotto, who's just joined us from Milano. Thank you, Eduardo, for joining us. We're about to ask you about the EU AI Act, the monster in the room. So, but before we do that, Kashyap, what kind of approach do you prefer with regulation?
So very quickly, I liked what Andrew and James said in the last question. I think to paraphrase them, they said we need to look at afresh and from first principles. So when we talk about regulation, so my question is, like, if there is a novel harm, let's talk about new regulation. But if the harm is not novel, it's already covered by existing, probably it's already covered by existing statutes in the book. So can we issue new guidelines for this thing? But regulation is a tough thing because if you look at it, and James alluded to this as well, some of this thing. We're trying to balance consumer welfare, worker protection, citizen rights, trade policy, national security, and global competitiveness, industrial policy. So we shouldn't look at the regulation as a monolith. And all of this we're trying to do in a technology that is like rapidly advancing every week.
Thank
So
you for that.
that's the challenge before us. So we should probably educate our regulators first on AI and all these competing priorities. So right now, I think we're all sort of lost in the complexity and enormity of the task. Let's stop here.
Speaking of complexity and enormity, how about that EU AI Act, Eduardo? You could get a hernia lifting the thing.
So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So please, first, please forgive my delay, and thank you, James, for this opportunity and this occasion to talk with you and share ideas with all the colleagues around the world. Of course, from the point of view of an American AI Act is something very complicated. I mean, also for us, for European one, AI Act is a very complex regulation. By the way, we think that is very important for a country that has a tradition of a control of the state, of a public power on technology on the market. It's very important to have a complexity and a balancing between innovation and regulation. The European AI Act, I think, of course, is very complicated because it's regulating a technology that we don't know exactly very well. Is something that we will know, but is fundamental because it could be also a value for our market, because when the market has to choose if chose between a technology that is without regulation, so without protection of rights, and a technology that have a regulation, and so that our data, our rights are protected, probably in our case in the European market, regulation could be a value for our market. So this is the issues and also the challenge that we have to tackle.
And finding the time to read the actual EU AI Act, which could be, maybe you could just put it in PDF and then put it into a generative AI program to give you like the top 10 things you need to know. We're almost at the end. We're excited.
Good idea, Jay.
You like that? I do that with my lectures now. And speaking of which, I do want to mention Dr. Steven Tyler, not the lead singer from Aerosmith, will be joining us at a class. So I'll try to put that on my social media so others can join us. He'll be speaking in my AI and law class because he's open. He won't talk about the litigation, and rightfully so, but he is going to explain what Davos does and some of his other machines with respect to the creativity. Which leads us to our lightning round here on AI and Law panel for Davos Worldwide. You've got 1 minute or less to answer, please, and because we're almost at the end of our time together, and I want to thank all our participants, Dr. James Ong, Andrew Muroff from Toronto, James is from Singapore and is now in Davos, Cascio Campella in Bangalore, India. Thank you, Adolfo Silva Walbaum from Chile, and Professor Eduardo Raffiotta in Milano, and Dr. Ayal Brook in Tel Aviv. We've got a lot of doctors. I'll be talking to you about my knee problems a little bit later. But before that, here's our big question. What is the effect of AI, synthetic creativity, on human creativity? We're surrounded in this panel with a lot of people, whether they're lion drummers like Dr. James Ong, or guitarists and guitar makers like Andrew Muroff, or singers like Adolfo, or pianists and musician extraordinaire like Ayal Brook. Eduardo, I don't know if you play music, but I bet you do. We'll have a band one day and we'll all jam. Let's start off with you, James. What is the effect of AI, synthetic creativity, on human creativity, please?
I think it's going to be 1 + 1 = 10 or hundreds, because I think synthetic creativity from AI is a form of augmentation to human, towards what I always propose, that we should not look at just human intelligence or machine intelligence. We should look into something what we call human AI symbiotic intelligence. So this question about combining the creativity is a new form of intelligence that we human alone cannot achieve, but combined will actually allow us to create, discover new things in every area, from science to economics and many other areas.
Thank you for that. Andrew Muroff, what say you?
Well, I look at it from the angle of technology development and from content creation. And so as a musician, I think we're still pretty far away from replacing human creativity. I think, like Dr. Ong said, there's certainly going to be advancements that will help us to make better material, but we're still not at the place where you can replace a human in it. In terms of technology development, I think we're a little bit more advanced in that way, and I think there are going to be some jobs that will be replaced as a result of that. And we're going to need some better guidelines around what's acceptable, and permissioning and consent and data that flows from that. But I think it's exciting times. I think we're in for an exciting 5 to 10 years now of new types of content creation.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Kashyap, you're up next.
So I think because of AI, the base level of creativity of humans has increased for the average human. But as the American economist Tyler Cowen he's written a book some time back called "The Average is Over." This is average is over. So that's one thing. So at this point in time, AI is like average intelligence. So it personally, I know about writing, and it is personally pushing me to do better and improve my own creativity. So that is an interesting thing. So one small, very quick anecdote. In 2020, when GPT-3 was released, it was not as powerful. ChatGPT was in by 2022. So because it was novel at the time, it could write reasonably passable human columns. I wrote 3 or 4 of my columns saying that, hey, AI is able to write this. This is 2020. Now, a few years fast forward with ChatGPT, 2 years behind us, all my editors, all my writing contracts say you cannot use AI generated text. So that's why it's making my life harder.
Thank you for that. Ayal, what's your sense about synthetic creativity?
I think that's an important concern, basically. And there was a very interesting article by Professor Dan Borg, Chip Creativity and What It Will Do, and basically said that in light of this important development, it does shift our attention from the question of ownership towards investment in the interest in the value and importance of authenticity, basically. Because this provides basically a synthetic substitute for human creativity. And the concern is that it will create so-called, what has been termed zombie art, the zombification of art. Every day today, 34 million of photos are created. It's unprecedented the amount of photos. And what is the effect of this? I think it requires us to rethink what it means to be human, basically in a world of cheap creativity. And the central question would be whether the protection of such works aligns with the very purpose and rationale of copyright law.
Thank you for that, Ayal. Adolfo, what say you?
I think it's an opportunity and it's a huge challenge. It's an opportunity to work with a new friend, with new ideas. So if you start working with a new friend, with a new idea that think very different like you are, so it's possible that you are gonna bring new things. But for the other hand, like AL said, it's a huge challenge to be very responsible at the time with these new things they're going to create.
Thank you for that. Eduardo, what's your sense of the effect?
So first question, I play saxophone, so I play music. And about artificial, yeah, okay, so we will play together in San Francisco.
This is very exciting.
About AI, I think that is an excellent support. I don't believe in the substitution of man. Of course, some activity will replace it, but I think that AI is an excellent support for all kind of activities. And of course, it's better if you have a protection on your idea, so you have a copyright in the European way, because you can have a protection of your ideas and a connection and empowerment with the technology. So this is the best mix. Even if we have a look in the United States, where copyright issues are the main issues that we see in the tribunals, in front of the courts. So.
Thank you for that. And thank you to all of our guests, panelists today, to Dr. James Ong on the sidelines right now in Davos. Thank you so much for joining us. Andrew Muroff from Toronto, thank you. Kashaf Kampela, always a joy. Toda Rabba Ayal Brook in Tel Aviv. Gracias to our friend in Chile, Adolfo Silva. And grazie mille, and ci vediamo dopo, to Eduardo Raffiota. Thank you all. This has been a great panel. This has been Davos Worldwide, the panel on AI and law. And we turn it back to Anand Singh. And thank you all again for your participation here on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. We're digital, we're Davos Worldwide. And thank you and good night.